Welcome one to another edition of Play It Through, and this time around it's another special ROM hack. We're doing Castlevania the Chorus of Mysteries. Now, not only is this pretty much a complete overhaul of the original Castlevania, it's also become one of the more popular ROM hacks, and for very good reason. Giving the game new sprites, new enemies, new music, new sub-weapon, new maps, new level paths. Everything about it has been changed up to make it feel like a completely different game, though there are, of course, little elements here and there that will remind you directly of the original Castlevania itself, but overall, almost everything was changed up for this ROM hack, and that's why it's considered as good as it is. Honestly, I think one of my favorite things about it is just the backstory that was created for this, where you're actually playing as Armand Dynasty, who is a descendant of Grant, who, of course, joined Trevor along with Alucard and Sypha back in Castlevania 3. So I like that whole kind of continuation of the lore of Castlevania. So it doesn't really step on anything because we didn't know of the character, but it still ends up making it a little bit more compelling to go along with the adventure. One of the first annoying enemies is like the change-up of the Panther into this ghost dog-like creature that ends up being stunned by your whips and doesn't actually end up dying, so you'll end up hitting them and then they'll continue to charge forward, which is especially annoying during that whole opening segment with all the ghouls or whatever they're supposed to be trying to attack us. Going down the stairs here, we're going to drop down. Thankfully, there's no pit down here. You can actually land safely in the water with the mermen trying to attack us. I will have to say, you have to be pretty good at the mechanics of jumping in Castlevania in order to handle this ROM hack. There's some pretty tricky jumps that are needed in order to advance, and sometimes if you end up missing them, it will end up costing you a life. Over here at the end of the first level, we fight a slightly different modified version of the Bat, which works as the first level boss, of course, in the original Castlevania. There's the Roman numeral in the right side, so you can be able to throw out 2 axes at one time, and use that to my advantage in order to easily dispose of the first level boss. Instead of a jewel at the end, we end up getting kind of like a vase, or vase, or urn, or something instead that we get to pick up, and that signifies the end of the first level. As you can see, everything's been changed up, even the design of the stage map, which is kind of cool. Level number 2 is probably my overall favorite, I feel, of the designs. It has a very unique chessboard-like structure to it, which ends up coming off really cool. The very first jump right here ended up costing me a couple of hits every once in a while because I would end up missing it and end up getting hit by one of the bones from the skeleton above me. If you still have the axe from earlier in the previous level, you can use it to take out this bone dragon guy before jumping over here. There are a few times where you'll like jump and end up like hitting like an invisible wall, it seems like, or maybe it was supposed to represent whatever's in the background, but I did have a few occasions of that throughout, which took a little bit to get used to. Most of the sub-weapons remain the same, like the Holy Water, the Cross, which I'll be using quite a lot, especially later on in the run. There's also the Knife and Axe, of course, as you've seen, but there's also a new sub-weapon, a Laurel, which was introduced in Castlevania 2 as an item that can grant you brief periods of invulnerability, and that's exactly what it ends up doing here. You'll have a brief period of invulnerability by using it, so it's actually one of the cooler sub-weapons, and definitely a nice little addition to this game. Gotta be careful here at this spot in order to make it across safely using the moving platforms. Thankfully, overall, jumping still works as well as it normally would in Castlevania, so there's really no problems with it as long as you're kind of used to like the heavy way that the main character ends up jumping. Like the overall weight of the character has always been extremely heavy. Here's a really tough spot though. You have to duck down and then wait for the other one to retract, and you'll have a very brief opportunity in order to get past the spikes without accidentally instantly being killed. And it's also a little bit rough to see some of the pits right there because of the way like the whole chessboard grid type thing is set up, so you can accidentally easily fall down into the pit. And of course we had to avoid the last bit of spikes on the far left side before hitting the staircase and moving up to this floor. Now here, take out the plant before deciding to go up the next staircase. have to kind of like bait the skeleton to walk away just a bit. It does seem to be a big increase in the amount of the crosses that you end up getting that wipe out all enemies on screen, and in fact during this upcoming boss fight they actually end up spawning quite a bit in order to help you try to take out this boss. Now this is actually one of the more annoying bosses in this ROM hack, just trying to hit this abomination as it's moving back and forth and consistently spawning. There's only a handful of times where it really comes down low enough that I'll be able to get multiple hits on it without accidentally getting a hit in and then being knocked away and off the platform. So I have to keep an eye consistently on my health. Now if you had an axe going into this, it would be much better than going into it like I did with the holy water instead, because honestly the holy water ain't gonna do you all that much good. As you can see, it's a nice swooping back and forth wave-like pattern that you'll have to get down. It can also go a little bit, stop, release one of these little demon guys, and then come immediately back out towards you. So you always have to be on your toes if you're going to be wanting to actually be able to not take damage during this fight. But usually if I'm able to get past this fight, I'm usually pretty good, as there's only one or two other areas of the game that are actually really challenging. I don't know, for whatever reason, I always have a problem with that boss. Level number 3 starts off with some nice hanging bodies in the background and some nice work on the window in the background. Stop right here on the edge and take out this guy before attempting to make the jump. There is a raven or crow waiting for you as soon as you make the jump, which can be a little bit difficult to take out. Grab the cross here if you want it. I recommend the cross overall, especially if you're able to get some of the Roman numerals in order to help you out with it. Take out the skeleton and the bird, then go over to the left side, hit this skeleton, but then break the statue, in which you'll be able to find one of the Roman numerals, so you'll be able to throw out 2 of those crosses at once, which will definitely come in handy. From pretty much here on out, I'll be keeping a hold of the cross, if at all possible. As soon as we go through the door, we'll have one of those modified ghosts coming towards us, then drop down, we'll use the cross in order to help us take out the bone tower before continuing on. There's another one of the bone towers right after that, which, if you've still kept that cross, you can use in order to help you dispose of it. A little bit farther in, though, you're going to have to deal with the bone dragon that's going to pop out of the wall here. But thankfully, just like in normal Castlevania, he really isn't too challenging. The worst part, of course, if you get too close, or he ends up hitting you with one of the few fireballs he may end up spewing out before you take him out. Now down here, be very careful of the skeleton so we don't end up getting knocked backwards into the pit. And thankfully, right afterwards, we end up getting a Roman numeral 3, so we're able to throw out now the 3 crosses, which I should hope to keep on me for the remainder. Another bone dragon guarding the door, but is easily dispatched with one of these crosses before grabbing the hearts that he ends up leaving behind and heading through that next door. There's a good amount of enemies coming right at you, including ghosts, a couple bone towers, as well as the raven birds, which are always a nuisance to deal with. The addition of having the Medusa heads, or this game's equivalent of the Medusa heads, isn't going to help very much. Be careful. Mostly if they end up hitting you, just make sure they don't end up knocking you back down into the pit. There is a ghost waiting for you over here, but it'll take a little bit to actually start moving around, so take out the crow first, then take out the ghost, and move on to the boss fight for this level. The boss is actually Slogra, which is actually pretty cool to see him done and in a Castlevania 1 style here. He's an extreme nuisance though, because he jumps back and forth from left to right, usually hopefully doing a lot of big leaps so that you'll be able to get underneath him as he's doing it though. He'll sometimes stop, throw a bone at you, or he'll just keep throwing fireballs. Use either the holy water or a cross in order to really kind of help you contain him before hopefully he'll eventually go down and you can move on to the 4th stage of the game. After that fall into the 4th level, be very careful because you're going to be right on the edge of a platform, so immediately make sure you do a nice jump. I like the modified merman type sprite, which has now been replaced with like this ghost siren, which is actually kind of really cool, like this female ghost that's going to be trying to get a hold of us. Make sure that you duck on this moving platform because the bones coming down from the ceiling can actually stop you. Either take out or jump over the bat, move to this platform, duck again, so that you'll be able to get underneath the bones. Thankfully, this area isn't really too long, though, as we'll be able to jump up the platforms on the right and pop out onto this section here. Now, this is a pain. Instead of, like, the birds dropping off the little flea men, you'll instead have these big, giant mouth demon guys dropping floating eyeballs that will then move around and try to take you down. This is pretty challenging. Try to keep a couple behind you, as it'll stop some more of them from spawning in front of you if at all possible, and keep on moving unless you're able to get a direct hit on one in front of you. Right near the door to the next area, there will be one of this game's equivalent of the flea men, which thankfully they look really small, but their hitbox is still about the same as they normally would be, so you should still be able to hit them. After trying to avoid an axe, because I don't want to pick that up, I end up taking a hit from one of these guys, and then there's more of the same for the last little bit before we end up making it to the boss of level 4. Now this boss is going to come at you pretty quick. It's this game's equivalent of Gaibon, and he'll fly and kind of hover, shooting out a huge amount of fireballs directly at you. If you can time it correctly, you can actually take out a few of the fireballs using your crosses. Jump to the other side eventually, though, if he's hitting you a few times, and this will allow you to have a little bit more distance between you and him, and should, if you have projectiles at least, be able to finish him off and move on to the next level. At the beginning of the 5th level, you can start off by going up the stairs. The plant to the right will come alive when you get up the stairs, but if you're quick enough, you can pretty much easily avoid any of the projectiles that it may end up firing out. At the very top, though, you're going to immediately be attacked by a flea man, so unleash one of your projectiles if you have any built up at that point, or just try to do a nicely timed whip. The Medusas all throughout this hallway are going to be a pain in the butt while you're trying to take out some of the other enemies, but just keep on trucking and persevering as you're making it through the stage. I love the inverted cross designs, which of course would probably have never made it past Nintendo censorship back in the day. Instead of the armor knights, though, you have these guys, which are another staple. They first, I think, were introduced technically in Castlevania 3, with them holding their heads, and they usually are in the pirate-themed areas or such, but either way, that's a nice little touch of changing the axe knights or whatever into those guys. Now over here, you can climb up next to the bone tower and actually take out this guy from below before actually making it up to the top floor. Once up the next staircase, head over to the left. There's going to be a plant immediately, so you can take that out. And then I recommend, of course, taking out the flea man before heading up that next staircase and fighting another plant right away. Once dropping down here, get ready. If you're able to kind of like bait these guys and keep them moving backwards and time your hits correctly, you can hit their projectiles as they're firing out, just like with the axe knight, so that you can keep them moving and keep delivering hits to them without accidentally getting taken off guard by their own projectiles they're firing at you. Stop here and take out the plant by doing a nice duck attack, so you should be able to hit the fire as well as the enemy. Now, the safe way to do this, of course, is going down the stairs and try to take them both out then, but a lot of times I'll just jump over across and continue to the left and then up the staircase without having to deal with those guys. In the next hallway, you could go down the stairs if you wanted to, but it's much easier, of course, just to jump on down, but be prepared for another plant as well as another one of those flea men, followed immediately by one of the axe-throwing dudes. Thankfully, not much overall to this room, and we're able to take next staircases. We get ready for the boss fight, which is actually cool that they use kind of the template of Dracula, but instead you'll fight two forms of this other guy here. This guy's a little bit difficult, but allows you to hit him a lot because he kind of just slowly shuffles over towards you. I usually end up getting hit at least once as he goes off the left side and then comes back. He'll throw projectiles the entire time, but be prepared because as soon as his health is gone, he'll immediately morph into his second form that you'll then have to take out. He does these big leaps though, and you'll want to try to jump over him and time it just right so that you'll be able to get past him without him accidentally hitting you. Because his sprite turns when you jump over him, this is actually used to your advantage because you get him close enough and then time a jump, he'll turn even in mid-air to face you, in which case he'll go the opposite way and you'll be able to get past him and run to the opposite side. Use those crosses as well as your whip when you get close to him in order to do that damage, and once he's finished off, we can move on to the final level of Chorus of Mysteries. The final level starts you automatically in the clock tower, which is always a staple of Castlevania games. And we'll start off by jumping on a couple of platforms and dealing with one of the green skeletons. And as soon as you get up the staircase, there's going to be another one there who's going to immediately probably jump right over you. At least hopefully. You'll then start to immediately get bombarded by the Medusa heads here. Now right here I just want to show it. That is the Laurel, which I'm not going to be picking up. I'm not going to be getting the invincibility here. It is helpful, don't get me wrong. But I definitely wanted to showcase it just a little bit by showing it off. Like I said, it'll give you a brief period of invulnerability, which actually makes it a really cool sub-weapon overall. Continue along the next room, and you can build up some hearts, as you probably will need them for the boss, as it is a modified version of Death that you're going to have to battle as the final boss of this particular ROM hack. Take out the red skeleton, climb up the staircase, and then head along here, which is thankfully a pretty easy path. There is a couple of Medusas along the way though, so be careful of them. And the skeleton down below will throw a bone up towards you sometimes, so be prepared. Usually a nice little jump near the end, near the staircase, will avoid you accidentally getting hit by that. Once up the staircase, kind of turn around, throw a cross if you have one, or use your whip to try to take out the green skeletons before moving over to that platform where they are, so they don't accidentally knock you back into the pit. After dealing with a red skeleton here, climb up this staircase, and now you're at the end. But before going up the staircase here, you can still go over to the left and refill your health by the first candle, as well as get an axe from the second one and a large heart from the third. So, depending upon which of the weapons you want. Though axe with multiple Roman numerals is useful, but if you end up picking up another sub-weapon, of course you'll end up losing that item multiplier, so it's best just to leave whatever you currently have. Now, throughout the course of these little candles, there are a bunch of random items. The very last one, though, contains a holy water, so be careful if you don't want to accidentally grab that. So basically, this boss is a modified Death. He's quite large and can end up doing a lot of damage if he ends up running into you. Plus, every time he ends up jumping, he spawns 3 more of the sickles that come flying towards you. I usually just bombard the crap out of him with as many crosses as possible, as well as whip shots added in order to try to do my best and try to take him down as quick as I can. Once he's taken care of though, you can grab the final item and sit back and enjoy the ending, the Chorus of Mysteries. So there you have a Chorus of Mystery, which happens to be not only one of the most popular of the Castlevania hacks, at least for Castlevania 1, it's definitely one of my favorites as well. I played it before in the past, but I decided, since I've been doing a lot of ROM hacks lately, to go ahead and kind of revisit this and play it for a video. So definitely worth checking out if you're a Castlevania fan. It's one of the better hacks available for the original game. But with that, that'll wrap up this episode of Play It Through. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving a thumbs up or commenting down below. If you enjoyed this Play It Through, be sure to check out the ROM hack I did for Legend of Zelda Curse from the Outskirts. It's a Mario 1 hack, but uses Zelda sprites. Or you can check out the Castlevania Bloodlines Play It Through I did many years ago, but it's definitely one of my favorite overall Play It Throughs and one of my favorite Castlevania games ever, and I actually do 2 playthroughs during that video. I also need to thank all the members of my Patreon. Without your guys' continued support, I wouldn't be able to keep doing what I'm doing. If you'd like to help out as well, just click that little Patreon button. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.